Well, by now, most of you are familiar with RIA, our AI human created by our NASCOM deep tech startup, autovid.ai. I'd like to request you the team to play the video as she introduces us to the next session.
Human created by autovid.ai. Let's move on to our next topic, technology, talent, and culture. The three imperatives for digital at scale. The professionals with the jobs of carrying out, adopting, and sustaining tech-enabled transformations deserve as much attention as the technological solutions they create and oversee. When an organization manages both its talent and culture effectively, the interplay between them can create a virtuous cycle, attracting talent, sparking innovation, and creating impact. However, transforming organizations' culture and talent in a digital transformation is often more challenging than tackling the technical elements. This session explores how these three imperatives come together for digital scaling.
We move into the next panel discussion, like Ria mentioned, on technology, talent, and culture, the three imperatives for digital at scale. I'd like to request you to please welcome our speakers, invite the speakers onto the stage. Deepak Sharma, Chief Digital Officer, Kotak Mahindra Bank. Sarajit, Chief Business Transformation and Digital Solutions, Tata Steel. And moderating this session is Guru Bhatt, Vice President, PayPal.
It's always hard to go after an extremely power-packed session with so many amazing women on stage. I think, gentlemen, I will look at you to bear all the burden of what awaits in front of us. Folks, I hope everybody is doing fabulously well. It's so wonderful to see everybody in person after, I think, 2.5 years of enduring, at least in my opinion, a very suboptimal living condition. So. Great to have all of you here. The topic that we have in front of us today is tech, talent, and culture, and what it means for life in front of us, especially in the context of India. With me, I have two panelists who are both Chief Digital Officers, Business Transformation and Digital Solutions Officers for organizations of great repute. I would even go so far as to say that they're both in institutions, not just organizations. So Deepak Sharma, Chief Digital Officer of Kotak Mahindra Bank. Big round of applause to him. And Sarajit, Chief Business Transformation and Digital Solutions Officer for Tata Steel. Big round of applause. So, you know, we've gone through a couple of years where life has dramatically shifted, where the pandemic and its impact on all of us has been so rampant that I think we've all been forced to accommodate a certain level of digitalness, if you will, into our life. So I think this is a question that, you know, I'll provoke all of you in the audience to also think of, because while I may direct it at Sarajit and Deepak, all of you should also think about this. When you look back at the last 2.5 years, Deepak and Sarajit, do you have an example of a digital experience that you accommodated into the context of your daily life that was eye-catching in some way because it's convenient, because it was so smart or so unique? Anything that you can think of that you never used to do before, but suddenly during the pandemic you started to do something that's digital in nature?
Well, I think one of the things I picked up early on in pandemic was I learned how to cook. Because sitting at home in front of screen, you needed some way to do something physical which you can still be within the four walls, but get away from, you know, your work and the screens that you watch. So I picked on to some internet, YouTube-based cooking. And I did realize that I think we were all trying to find new ways of doing things, or probably picking up something new altogether, which we never found time for as we were more in the physical or hybrid state. And I think there was a big transition in our own mindset about how do you repurpose yourself, repurpose your time, look at things that you probably never did earlier and you want to do now during pandemic.
So I guess we'll have to ask somebody else in Deepak's household on how his experiments with cooking had gone. Like that we'll leave for a different time. How about you, Sarajit? Anything that comes to your mind?
Yeah, so three things, in the interest of time. One, I'm on absolute work from home, so I've not seen the inside of an office for the last 2.5 years. And if I can continue, I will try to do that. And three things have changed in my life. I was a dog hater, and now I have Rush, I call him Rush Shah because he's like my third son. And then I have become a golfer. I also have to work, otherwise I would just love to take and swing around. And third is I have become an executive coach, which those who know me are like, the coaching standards in the country must have gone down because this guy can be a mentor, but a coach, really?
Well, you can add modesty to one of the things that you're probably renowned for. That's great to hear, Sarajit. And I'll probably start with you. Right? The topic obviously is a very wide one, but let me start maybe with something that is at the heart of everything that we do in our organizations, which is culture. So often, the more things change, the more they remain the same as well. While all of us have accommodated great change in our work lives, working from home, remote, virtual ways of working, the potential that the metaverse may play a huge role in our work lives as well as we move forward with virtual avatars and AR, VR modes of working, etc. What remains at the heart of everything that we want to do with technology? Because at the end of the day, the technology is a means to an end, and it's an enabler, not a driver. What do you think of as great culture, and what are the underpinnings of great culture? And have the last 2.5 years of working remotely, like you said, you've not seen the inside of an office. How has that changed your own perception of how great culture has to be built and harnessed and nurtured? And same question to you, Deepak, after Sarajit goes.
So in a way, I've been very lucky, right? We see ourselves as a 115-year-old startup, which means that what you do today matters. Whatever is the legacy is onto all the fantastic work that everybody did before us, right? And to me, culture is what is seen or perceived to get rewarded. So whenever somebody asks me, Sarajit, what you would do, the first question I have always, counter question always has been, how are you going to measure me? If you measure me on climbing trees, then I will kind of jump swings and, behave like a monkey. So that's how it always happens, right? So the three things, one is I see culture as a multiplication of 4 factors, which is accountability, into responsiveness, into people development, and into, sort of performance, right? So those are the 4 things which are collaboration, sorry. So those are the 4 things which are fundamental to how we see as a culture, which means that people take accountability for what they do. So say to do ratio of 1, people collaborate with each other, because while some of us may believe that we can do more singularly, it's a fact that none of us by definition are wiser than all of us, if you just think about it. Responsiveness, because the real-time experience and the kind of response that people require has become very fast, and there's a difference between reaction and responsiveness. So when you're talking about responsiveness, you're thinking about a thought-through, desired, calibrated response, and not just, saying, yeah, I've heard you and I will get back to you, right? So, and I think the last part is very important, which is that like the people before us invested in us, and so probably I'm sitting here, we need to think about who are the 5 people who are going to sit here next year. And for that to happen, they need to be happy, they need to be healthy, and they need to be then constructively engaging and giving their discretionary effort to the company. To me, the rest of it are all things that can get sorted out.
Very well said. Thank you. How about you, Deepak?
I think culture is often spoken about, but I always feel culture is best felt. It's not visible as something that you would get into an organization or talk to people. Because be it in our personal life or when we talk of culture in context to organization, finally, what's culture? It's a set of belief and value systems, right? So, and all of us, when we talk about our culture, it's about how we were brought up, the surrounding, the family, the value systems. And a lot of that defines us as to who we are. Can somebody come and change that? Extremely difficult. So I think even in organizations context, I see culture more as individually we all come with different set of belief and value system, but we come into an organization with common purpose. So while as a firm, we may state our culture is more collaborative or creative or innovative or risk averse, or that's fine. These are all words at the end of it. It comes to test moment you start seeing how each of these words are played by individuals, teams, and organization at a larger purpose. And I think that's extremely difficult for any organization which has been in business for long to completely transition to. Be it COVID or no COVID. I think one of the classic things, as we were discussing before getting into panel, is that while Sarajit had a very different experience in his context in a 115-year-old organization, but the whole organization can demonstrate a completely different way of operating, rewarding, collaborating, co-creating. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's extremely tough. I think every organization, and more so when you are a successful organization, I think that transformation becomes even tougher. Because a lot of us end up believing that we are successful because of the culture and the value that we imbibed over a period of time. And then you start saying, hey, listen, this was good till yesterday, but not anymore, either because of pandemic or the new workforce or the new business models or the kind of talent that we bring in. And I think this is where my experience has been that you have to do a small, careful bets and see how we can start demonstrating what we speak, initially with small set of cohorts. Mm-hmm. And I think then there are people who watch and they say, no, I think what you're saying is happening for real. And then that's when the belief of the larger organization starts to come in. So I think creating those experiments to success and then scaling up is how I've seen some of the successful transition happen, but it takes really long. It's not something which you can go and do it in a few years' time.
Yeah, that's a fascinating insight, Deepak, because all of us, I think, have experienced, thanks to the industry that most of us work in, I think we have the benefit or the great luxury of staying at home and still being productive, and we are able to be paid, right? And I remember, Sarajit, during my childhood, the iconic tagline of Tata Steel used to be, we also make steel. And as we were discussing outside, you were saying that the company is a digital company that happens to be in the business of steel. So when you look at, for both of you, this is a common question because you lead large organizations that are definitively looking at technology as an enabler for your growth in the future. Like, how do you look at these investments? And these are two dramatically different industries, financial services versus steel. What is your approach towards technology? How do you decide in what way you're going to invest on technology as an enabler, and with all the workforce also changing, the culture changing with new people coming into the workforce, college kids graduating the last 2 years of their college without ever having seen the inside of a classroom, things like that. How do you look at your tech investments?
So I think the way we look at it is we have broken it into 3 large buckets. What we call is here and now, things that we need to do to build and run a more efficient organization for today. So tech investments, which is leading definitely to my productivity gain, efficiency, better customer experience, reducing the fraud and the security threats, because the digital and financial service has a large component of, as you get more and more customers on the digital fold, there is also a higher propensity of some customers falling prey to it. Also building largely a cloud-first strategy, because as again we scale businesses today, it has a huge pressure on the infrastructure or our ability to scale up, scale down. So a lot of tech is about what do we do now to get the benefit in next 12 to 18 months at best. So these are what are our immediate bets. The second is largely we are seeing the financial services going through a massive change, be it in business model, be it the different players getting into financial service, from payments to lending to e-commerce, you name it. And I think India is a place which is the playground of every tech company to say, I want to do something in financial service. And I think that's where a lot of our focus is to build future-ready new business models like what we did with 811, which became the largest digital bank coming out of a mainstream bank, or what we launched recently in pandemic, Cherry, which is our open platform for investment. So you don't need to be a bank customer, but you can buy a product which is manufactured by anyone in the country. So the idea is to reimagine how the future is going to be and invest on technology to make those new business models happen, even though they may be cannibalizing our existing business in short run, but we believe that some of those are the levers of our growth. And I think the third part of our tech is largely taking bets on the future-ready technology. Some of them may not be mainstream yet, but idea is be it on blockchain or be it looking at some use cases around 5G, looking at some of the advanced data science capability. I think a lot of those building the cryptography-based authentication stack. We'd recently launched Kotak also in our metaverse called Konaverse, which is our own space there. Building on the central bank digital currency, which is what RBI recently published the paper. Some of these are bets into the future. None of us know how big, how successful will these be. Yeah. So I think, and we work on all the three priorities of ours at the same time. Obviously, you decide what allocation you want to put in each bucket, but keeping the view of here and now leading into the future.
So, Deepak, I think, being in PayPal, I can identify very strongly with all the roadmap items that you laid out, right? I'm all ears, Sarajit, to find out how Tata Steel looks at the digital transformation and the use of technology.
So we have, over the last 5 or 6 years, because we were seen as a locational steel company, to become a locational agnostic AI data-led digital company is a massive transformation to make. And we realized that re-engineering the past is not going to do it for us. As Deepak was saying, we have to just reimagine the future. We have created multiple lenses and frameworks to do this. So I'll just share a few of them. So the first framework we have is we have a 7-layer IT architecture or a digital architecture. The bottom layer of that IT architecture is the cloud network cybersecurity. And we are saying that, for example, we have increased our bandwidth from 2.5 Gbps to 13 Gbps across 146 locations. We have taken 90% of our addressable clouds to a multi-cloud architecture. And I can say for the team that we are probably the few people in the world who really understand what a multi-cloud architecture is. And I don't know if somebody from our partners are here, but I would always challenge one of the cloud providers whenever they would come and talk to me about another cloud saying, when did you last run that cloud? The answer can't be more than 30 days at least, but my people are running it 30 seconds now, 30 seconds forward also they'll be running it. So let's not have that discussion. So, that kind of, I wouldn't say tech arrogance, but tech confidence on the bottom layer. And as Deepak was saying, the layer after that is what we call the sensorization layer, because we have 300,000 sensors, steel plant has pressure, temperature, air, hot metal, permeability, all of the OT technologies, the DCS, the PLCs, because we literally underpin and run cities. It's like a 6x4, 6x6 space that we are running across, say, 5 big centers in the world, right? So it's a massive process industry. Over that, we have what we call the enterprise architecture. So you have the 4 main things. You have the CRM, customer relationship management, the HRM, which is the human relationship management, the ERP, and we have what we call the MES, so the manufacturing execution systems, because that's what probably a bank or a PayPal hopefully will not have. And that's core technologies to us, which is down. And these 3 layers together is what we call the infra and the agility layer, because these are the layers that allow us to jump. If these layers are weak, we'll be having different questions to answer to the board and all our customers and our internal. The middle layer, then we say, is what we call the data layer. This is the fundamental data and advanced analytics layer now, because we have made some changes. This is where the intelligence and the insights readiness comes in, because all the data comes in. And this is what we call our digital layer. To us, this is digital. All the bottom layers are supposed to throw up data to us to do that. Over the top of that, we define what we call the 3 consumption layers. So the first layer is obviously what we call user apps, because these need to be run for experience and not for efficiency. The enterprise apps need to be run for security and efficiency, Because if you are overpaying for your ERP, you will have questions from the audit committee, and rightly so. But these are where we say that, okay, this is how these systems of innovation and the systems of experience are really going to come in. And a lot of our focus this year is on that. And I dare say that I'm trailing in that. I hope my boss is not hearing. On top of that is the AI layer that we run. And that's where our artificial intelligence is. We make a difference now between advanced analytics, in which we are, I mean, people tell us, World Economic Forum tells us we are a global powerhouse, and AI, where I think we have miles to go before we sleep. And then is the visualization layer. So these are the sort of 3 layers. And to quickly now sum this up, the way we look at investments is it has to be 7x returns. The 7x means I invest now. From the time that it goes live, I need 7x returns on, if I've invested $1, I need $7, otherwise I won't make that investment. The other lens that we look at it is what we call, what am I in each of these layers, what am I retiring, what am I mainstreaming, what am I containing, and what am I experimenting on, as Deepak was saying. And the other lens that we look at is that a technology lens, where we are saying social, mobile, analytics, cloud, robotics have become hygiene. It's 5G, blockchain, quantum computing, and of course AI that continue to be the dominant forces. So one can go on, but in the interest of time, you get a sense. There are multiple lenses to look at it, but it needs to give me 7x return on the 7-layer IT architecture.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Sarajit. That was very, very comprehensive and very well structured as well. I certainly have the disadvantage of sitting here and not taking notes, but if I was there, I would be taking notes. That was very well done. So maybe one topic that both of you talked about, and I'll go with you first, Deepak. This era that we are coming into now is one that is pervasive in the use and potentially abuse of data as well. And NASSCOM is a huge proponent of deep tech in the country, and obviously the use of deep tech relies on data that you can capture about every single interaction on your systems, whether it's from your customers or any other partners that you have. So how are you looking at deep tech as an enabler of the right outcomes for both the business as well as your customers as you move into the future? And any light that you can throw on what are your key deep tech investments as you look forward?
Yeah, I think this is, financial service always had more data than what we could do with the data, right? So I think we were often accused that banks always had data, and I see very little value as a customer as to what you do with it. Last, I think, 3 or 4 years, it has accelerated. But I would just bring 2 or 3 things what we have started to do while there are many initiatives. I think can't list everything here. One is, I think we are largely moving in financial service at a fast pace on the data privacy and security as the first layer, because it's important for us before we start mining the data, or like we say, looking at the velocity, veracity, volume of data, is to see what kind of privacy, what kind of consent mechanism, encryption, end-to-end do we do, because we also get a lot of data from the public stack. For example, we get Aadhaar data. Not many institutions in the country are allowed to store Aadhaar, but when I get Aadhaar data, I have to ensure across all my system it is in encrypted manner, hashed. Nobody can get access to it. Again, I think aggregated and anonymized level of stuff on which we run most of our experiment. So I think first is we have set up the whole data governance platform to ensure that while there are many stakeholders who are building the deep tech use cases, they still do not have the access to the data in its raw form. I think the second part of our strategy is to look at what we have done is moving a lot of data to cloud. Because again, as we have moving more and more to cloud first, we realized our traditional data was all sitting on-prem. So our ability to look at some of the cloud native engines, largely be it our CDP, which is building it proprietary, looking at bringing all kind of in-app to transaction to your geolocation data. How do we bring it at a place where it can create new models and value? Third is to run multiple experiments that we do using deep tech. For example, we are now the first bank to start providing loan on the open credit enabled network. Now, this is the data I get through the GEM Sahay GST invoice data. we are able to build real-time mining of the data to decide whether to give a loan or not, and the loan gets disbursed in 8 minutes. Plan is to crunch it even further. Again, these are experiments because there can be some bad loans, there can be losses, because traditional underwriting model is not in use here. I'm not getting any financial, your bank records. All I'm doing is I'm scoring a particular transaction at a point in time and deciding whether this transaction is worth lending to or not. So I think the models like these, be it on security, looking at basis your keystrokes and your geolocation, and what kind of device applications have you installed. We run now a real-time analytics every time on your app to decide whether to give you access to your banking app or not, or ask you to do a step-up authentication, or allow you to only view transaction but not to make a transaction, or if you are using an airport or any unsecured Wi-Fi, how to detect that data and decide whether that creates any kind of risk when you access a banking app. So it's possible that your app or your phone has got infected with a malware or a spyware, and that's stealing credential. Now, I can very easily go and say as a bank, sorry, that's your problem, Mr. Customer. But the reality is, if I'm the custodian of your money and trust, then I have to build my own deep tech model to understand what are the threat vectors, fraud, credential stealing, screen sharing, and secure Wi-Fi. And there are almost 40 such parameters we score real time to take a decision as to what should I do with this particular authentication or a transaction.
That's great.
Taking it further to deep tech, we are also building a whole cryptography-based digital DNA of customer. So each one of us have a very different behavior of what we do in the digital ecosystem. But when you come onto a banking app or a net banking, it still asks you for a password and an OTP, right? Which is, again, prone to getting hacked. Our idea is, again, how do I get your digital DNA and bring that data in to solve for who you are and what you are doing in the real time? We partnered with, right from Indian Institute of Science here in Bangalore, where we have now set up a center for fintech and advanced analytics and machine learning. So we are sponsoring that as we're setting up an institute right here in this city. I work also very closely with MIT on bringing in this whole cryptography-based authentication. So our idea is to keep building and scaling up and solve some hard problems. Working with, obviously, ecosystem player, and I think this is where I call out for the community at NASSCOM that if there are great products, solution, or problem that you're solving, we are pretty happy to work with you.
It's awesome. As a customer, Deepak, I feel very safe now that you've told me all this. I am a customer of Kotak, and it's great that the kind of investments you're making in security. So what should I be experiencing when I touch some Tata Steel in terms of deep tech, Sarajit?
Ideally, excellence and hyper-personalization. So excellence would mean that we understand you, we know you. So it would mean 5 things that, and of course, we are not there yet, but if you were to go to our Ashiana platform, you would be able to sell steel, and we are selling about 150 to 200 crores of steel on the net. And this is a difficult product to sell. And the other thing we are very proud of is that we're solving a real problem. There are 27% of our customers are NRIs, so people who want to make a house for somebody in the country, but they are not able to do, and it brings tears to our eyes, the number of people who tell us every month that, thank God you guys are there, I'm able to make a house, and my parents were able to live in it. The other part to that is, of course, that we need to, look at authorization, authentication, and access control, of course, are a big point. We have to be GDPR compliant. We can't use and leverage your data. So fundamentally, that question, what you should see of tech is you should not see any tech. Tech works when it's not seen. If tech is seen, it means it's not working. So how do we get there? We get there through hyper-personalization, and we define hyper-personalization as 5 or 6 things. One, are we able to create a single prospect, customer, employee, or a stakeholder view? And in immutable data, but which is publicly verifiable. Second, we look at, are we able to understand the respective stakeholder journeys end to end? Do we understand the events or the moments that matter? Because not every moment matters. I mean, I go to a bank, I go to 811, I try to log in. The first time the login that doesn't happen, it means that it has not delivered on the, I'm not saying it's obviously happened. But that it doesn't deliver. Same for us. You try to buy steel from us, everything happens. Then you go into the gateway, and your transaction is declined. So that's clearly a failure to deliver, not magic. That's what we want to deliver, but even logic at a moment that matters. And then ultimately, am I able to do this in scale and predictably? So for us, AI fundamentally means that am I able to do sense AI? And when I say sense, this acronym unfolds as what humans do, right? So humans do, I call it scale. Humans do sense, they comprehend. So I see an audience and I see no reaction in the audience. Okay, I sense the audience and I comprehend that, okay, maybe what I'm making is not making much sense. Then, I act on it. So I say, okay, let me try to make this a little bit more humorous, use more eye contact. Then I learn from it. Oh, some people there are still sleepy, but I see some lady smiling here and I'm getting some response. And then I learn, right? And then I again experience it. So I take this, and in the next forum, I would know that I need to make this a little bit more engaging rather than talking about a similar IT stack that Guru says, okay, this makes sense to me maybe, but it didn't make sense to anybody in the audience. So I get the feedback, fair enough, let's talk golf. So that's what my system should be doing, not me talking, but the systems delivering on that, and that's the standards that we are trying to set for our teams in terms of what, and our MD has said that needs to happen in every single, whether it's an investor, it's a stakeholder, it's even a person that we serve as a company in CSR. Why should a person who is getting an education on Tata Steel funds not experience education in Tata Steel just because we believe we are helping them? That's the compassion and empathy that our systems need to show.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarajit. And I think we are unfortunately running out of time, but excellent thoughts. And I'd love to any day catch up with you gentlemen on topics of importance like this. Thank you very much for being such an engaged audience. Obviously, you were hanging on to every word of both these gents, and I hope all of you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Thank you very much.